breaking news that just occurred, which is that President Trump put out a statement saying that we have a deal with China. I think this is probably good for everybody. Look, I think there's been obviously a lot of debate over how we have a relationship with China. But as I've said this entire time, the idea that we are going to be completely free of working with China is a bit absurd. And look, it's not to say that it's good. It's just the way things are right now. Sometimes you have to look at reality. You have to look at the reality of the situation. It's like people tell me, they're like, Logan, you should be against all war. And it's like, I am against all war. I wish there was no war. However, we live in a world where there is war. So we have to at least talk about it because we have to be realistic. So Trump posts this on Truth Social just a few minutes ago. Our deal with China is done, subject to final approval with President Xi and me. Full magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied up front by China. Likewise, we will provide China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and university, which has always been good with me. We are getting a total of 55% tariffs. China's getting 10%. Relationship is excellent. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Of course, that is in a signature all caps style President Trump post again on Truth Social. So again, announces will a done deal with China. And there are a lot more details. That's sort of the overarching.
Right.
But I think this is to settle down.
Right. We haven't seen the full readout because it says, among other things we agreed to. Obviously, this comes out of the negotiating teams from China and the Trump administration in London. And they have negotiated this deal. And when he says the deal is done, meaning they have agreed to an agreement. They have come to an agreement. They know what each side is getting. The final sign-off is all that is left, and that would be by Xi Jinping in China and President Trump here in the United States. But I think it's also interesting, and we'll get into this as we go through, because the inflation numbers for May just came out. And this was something that, if you saw all the hysteria around the tariffs, that this was going to wreck our economy, that this was a disaster.
Armageddon.
It was all at Trump's doing. And what we've seen is that inflation actually rose less than they were projecting. It rose by 0.1%. 0.1%. So the year-over-year inflation right now is currently at 2.4%. The Fed's target rate, because the Fed, in the way our economy runs, is based off target inflation. They actually don't want inflation too low, because that is how our economy works with the central banking. So the target rate is 2%. It's only 0.4 above the target rate. And if you will call back to the previous administration, which had a peak inflation rate year over year of 9.1%, and you're drawing a contrast when people said this was going to be the end of the American economy, I think we can safely put that to rest, that the negotiations, the tariffs, at least up until this point, and if we get signatures on this deal, have seemed to have worked in favor of the American economy.
Yeah, I think there'll be a long-term impact. We'll have to see what it looks like. I'm curious when we have this conversation a year from now,
right,
what we're looking at here. And I think a lot of people are anticipating a President Trump move like this with many other countries. And what do those final tariffs kind of look like? It is a tariff situation that is more in favor of America than it has been in the past. Because I think, well, when you hear percentile, you still go, well, how come they get 55%, we get 10%? It feels like it's still backwards, still feels like it's not quite there yet. But compared to where we were, this is a big improvement.
Well, with the U.S. keeping 55% tariffs on Chinese goods, which is what, when we were raising our tariffs, people were saying we're going to spiral the inflation out of control. What you're actually seeing is that is still keeping the messaging and the plan of President Trump to want to bring manufacturing to the U.S. There's still that incentive to bring this back to America to avoid the manufacturing and situations when you're importing goods from China being slapped with a 55% tariff. Now, they also were able to negotiate down China's charged rate on American goods, which helps American businesses that want to export things to China, because it raises the demand for the American goods in China. By having only the 10% tariff, that actually helps American manufacturers and American products that are sent over to China, because the demand in China will rise for that. So that does seem to fit within even the entire goal of President Trump, by still us keeping a higher tariff on Chinese goods is to try to promote American businesses to compete with China. Yeah. But at the same time, China having a much lower tariff rate on the things we send there raises demand, helps pour money back into the U.S. economy. The student visa thing is interesting.
Yeah, I want to take a call actually on this, and then we'll spin into that, because I think that is where people are going to go, okay, I'm not sure how we feel about that. That looked like something that maybe a lot of our listeners were supportive of. But I'm not so sure. Deb, go ahead. You're in Oregon, and you're listening on the radio, but you're also on the air.
Thank you so much for taking my call, and I do distrust China, and I expect the students will be used as spies against us as much as possible.
Deb, I don't want to ever paint a people group or a country with a wide swath, but we have seen that happen a lot. We have seen the police forces that have been popped up in cities across this country. It is not like we haven't seen China do a little infiltrating, if you will, not always on the up and up.
Well, and to Deb's point, what have we seen over the last 2 weeks?
Oh, that's true.
Just a couple days ago, we saw that, and many people miss this because this happened in the midst of all the LA stuff just earlier this week. But a third individual has been arrested and charged by the Department of Justice. FBI led the investigation of a student that was doing PhD work at the University of Michigan, once again, the same university, and they were bringing in biomaterial that was not disclosed, that was being sent from China to the United States for nefarious purposes. That comes off the heels of, I believe it was just last week, 2 individuals from China charged with smuggling in a fungus that would wreak havoc on crops in America. But on top of that, it sometimes goes undetected, and when humans ingest it, it can do very bad things to the human population, including just the population of the United States could be affected in perpetuity based off of those that bioagent. So, Deb, you're not wrong, but here's
not wrong to at least have those thoughts cross your mind.
And I think here's the flip side of this. If this were the deal that was negotiated under a Biden administration, the Biden administration did not seem skeptical of the Chinese Communist Party. They didn't seem, they would make statements about, Chinese aggression and that Xi Jinping was, targeting around the world and doing all these things. But there was no teeth behind it.
Yeah, they're playing politics, but not for the American people.
This is obviously the student visas was a negotiating tactic, as we pointed out many weeks ago when they paused all student visas or even faculty, any academic visas from China. But it was clearly used as a negotiation tactic. Now, the flip side of that is that we know that individual that was arrested this week had been doing this under the Biden administration, sending things into the United States. It wasn't caught under that because what were they doing at the FBI? They were focusing on sending spies into Catholic churches or parents at school boards or their DEI messaging within the entire bureau. When instead they should have been doing things like this, looking for foreign threats on American soil. And that's what the new FBI is doing. So the trade deal, I think you also have to look at it that this administration is skeptical of China. They have a healthy respect for the adversary that China is. And so I think if you take this and the things that they can get out of it and can actually monitor, they can monitor these tariff numbers, they can do that. The State Department can beef up the way the visa program is run. It doesn't mean open season.
Yeah, I mean, Will, I think yesterday I may have been the bad guy. I think today you are, because the comments are saying, Will, you're like justifying them bringing in bioweapons. You're like, it's fine.
I'm not. I'm actually saying the opposite of that. I'm saying that
I'm putting those words in your mouth.
What we are doing is seeing that our FBI is charging these people and putting them in prison. They're going to put them behind bars. They're going to charge them with potential acts of terrorism. You can look at the counts of what they've been charged with already. I'm not saying that's okay. I am saying that this was a negotiating tactic that for the economic side of it, I understand it. And I understand where the president got to. But I also think that the Justice Department, the FBI, they're not just going to allow writ large people just to go on their way. They now know what the MO is. This isn't a spy balloon traversing the entire United States.
When you start doing deals with China,
right?
which again, I told you and I said, and I'm not saying I disagree with those deals because I think it's inevitable we have to work with China. I think America is not ready to live in a China less world. It would be virtually impossible. Sadly, I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way. That is just how we've built this country right now. We're all goods. Everything looking around this studio, 95% of the things in the studio were probably at least at some point touched by China, whether that was, the materials being used or whether it was the screens being made or the microphone in front of me. There is a pretty good chance that all of it had something somewhere, again, that China touched it. So we can't live in like a la-la land where we go, well, we're just going to cut them off. However, President Trump played big. He got a little innovative, tried something new, and it looks like it may pay off. And we are seeing moderate. Again, the market rose, you said, like a little bit. Like we haven't had a crazy response yet, but it just happened.
Right, that's right. And so, once again, it's also not it hasn't been signed yet.
You don't even know what it says.
When it's fully signed, I expect the world to rejoice that there is the end of this trade war with China. But to your point as well, Logan, and when people may be saying, like, I don't want to do anything with China at this point, that's a very noble goal. But the reality is, what would crash the economy totally? Globally is if you completely cut off China 100%, because every nation has become so beholden to them because of their humanitarian abuses. That the reason they can produce these things for so much cheaper and everyone can enjoy it. So you can't just pull the plug on it. You have to do incremental steps to negotiate to put the United States in a much better economic position so that going down the road, we can strengthen ourselves. We can become more self-reliant.
And these are bigger expectations and bigger wants. When you look at a Gulf of America, that kind of thing, and then you see this, that we're negotiating, having a deal with China, I do feel that I understand that those message points get a little blurry because you go, on the one hand, we're making changes to be pro-America that are meaningless in the generic sense. They're not going to do anything to you economically. They're not going to necessarily do anything for your country long term. It's just sort of a fun little change. And then on the other hand, you're going to negotiate with Iran. You're going to negotiate with China. But again, that's been President Trump's deal. He'll sit down with anybody. Sat down with North Korea last time. I mean, this is not a guy who has shut himself off. For so much as they want to pretend that the Trump administration is isolationist, I think you can very much turn to the Biden administration and go, man, they were as isolationist as you could if you were at all an adversary. You wouldn't even talk to Russia. Wouldn't even talk to North Korea. Wouldn't even have these conversations. Would not go to bat for anything for America because it was all political show. And the American people responded to that. We are so excited to announce the ACLJ's brand new app, completely redesigned to provide you with the best tools available to partner with us at the ACLJ. You can watch the daily Sekulow program, sign the petitions, customize your ACLJ membership experience, donate with the click of a button, and receive up-to-the-minute critical updates that the mainstream media can't censor. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to your phone's app store, search ACLJ, and click install. It's that simple.